The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. One family runs a country for over half a century, 56 years. And then, just like that, in a single day, the whole thing comes crashing down. That's exactly what happened in the Central African nation of Gabon, and it sent absolute shockwaves across the continent.
So let's set the scene. The date is August 30th, 2023. In the capital city, Libreville, the entire nation is pretty much holding its breath after a really tense presidential election. But what came next? Well, it wasn't a victory speech. It was a broadcast that changed everything. Suddenly, you've got a group of military officers appearing on national television. And their message was, let's just say, blunt. The government was dissolved, the election results were thrown out, and the borders were sealed shut. As for President Ali Bongo, he was now under house arrest.
And just like that, in one televised address, a 56-year dynasty, one of the longest in modern African history, was over. So what was the immediate spark that lit this political powder keg? You guessed it, the election result itself.
Officials had just announced that President Ali Bongo had won a third term, with over 64% of the vote. Now, for many Gabonese, and this is the crucial part, for the military, that number wasn't a victory. It was the absolute last straw after decades of questionable elections and a feeling that the government had no real legitimacy. So you see, this wasn't just about one election. This was the end of an entire era. The Bongo family's half-century grip on power was finally broken, which, of course, begs the question, how in the world did one family hold on for so long, and what finally made the whole system snap? To really get what happened here, you have to understand the House of Bongo, the political machine that pretty much defined modern Gabon.
This timeline really tells the story. It all kicks off back in 1967 with Omar Bongo. He sets up a single-party state and rules for over 40 years. When he dies in 2009, power passes to his son, Ali Bongo, which was controversial, to say the least. But the real cracks in the foundation start to show in 2018 when Ali Bongo has a major stroke. That created this huge power vacuum and raised serious questions about whether he was even fit to rule, setting the stage for everything that went down in 2023. Now you might be wondering, how did they hold on for so long? Well, the Bongo regime basically stood on three pillars. First up, you've got the ruling party, the PDG, which had its hands in every aspect of political life. Second, the muscle, the elite Republican Guard, a powerful military unit whose entire job was to protect the president. And the third piece of the puzzle? A very close relationship with France, the former colonial power. These ties often meant French political and business interests helped keep the Bongo regime secure. But underneath what looked like a stable surface was this huge, glaring contradiction that defined Gabon for years. You could think of it as a paradox of plenty. Think of this chart like a doctor's report for the country just before the coup. And honestly, the diagnosis is not good. Just look at the scores for political transformation and governance. Things like rule of law and the stability of democratic institutions, they're really, really low. The country had money, sure, but its political foundations were just crumbling. And this is where that paradox just slaps you in the face. On paper, Gabon is one of the highest GDPs per capita in the region. It's a wealthy country. And yet, over half of the population saw themselves as poor. So for the average person, they're watching the country's incredible wealth from oil and timber just fuel this lavish lifestyle for the elites, while their schools and hospitals were falling apart. The money just wasn't trickling down. The very institutions that are supposed to ensure fairness, they were broken. The country's score for having an independent judiciary was a dismal 3 out of 10. It means people just didn't believe the courts were separate from the president's influence, which makes any real accountability basically impossible. And it gets even worse. The score for commitment to democratic institutions, a shocking 2 out of 10. I mean, 2. That's not just a failing grade. It basically says democracy was a suggestion, not a reality. The system was a democracy in name only. So, after President Bongo's stroke, that decay just sped up. His family, and in particular his son Noureddin, jumped right into that power vacuum. They started pushing out experienced government officials and putting their own loyalists in, making the government feel even more like a family business. This was the final straw, the thing that created the legitimacy crisis that made the whole regime so vulnerable.
And into that vacuum stepped a man from the inside, a man named General Brice Oligui Nguema.
Now this is where the story takes a really wild twist. The guy leading the coup wasn't some outsider. General Nguema was Ali Bongo's own cousin. And not only that, he was the head of the Republican Guard, the very unit created to protect the president. In a stunning move, the protector became the usurper.
At first, the people were celebrating. They were literally carrying him through the streets. He made a clear set of promises to the nation. He said he would restore the broken institutions, create a new constitution, and at the end of it all, hold free and fair elections.
But this brings us to the massive $64,000 question that's now hanging over Gabon's future. Is this a real revolution, or is it just a palace coup? Sure, there's a new leader, but is it the same old system?
The new leader himself has said it's possible to, and I quote, make something new out of something old. That one phrase perfectly captures the tension here. He's suggesting he wants to build a new Gabon, but he plans on using parts of the old Bongo regime to do it.
And this right here shows you the huge gap between the talk and the walk. The promise of good governments, it's being undercut by reports of government contracts being handed out without any competitive bidding, a classic red flag. The idea of a clean break, it's kind of hard to believe when the new leader is working so closely with the old ruling party. And despite talk of transparency and new leadership, a whole lot of officials from the Bongo era are still in powerful positions.
So, for the skeptics, this doesn't look like a revolution at all. They're worried that what's been called Gabon's Republic of Cronies is just regenerating itself with a new face at the top. The fear is that the system isn't being dismantled, it's just getting rebooted.
Which leaves us with this final, unavoidable question. The Bongo dynasty is over. Gabon has a new leader. But after 56 years of one family running the show, you have to ask, is this really a new beginning? Or are we all just watching someone turn the page to the next chapter of the same old book?